So hello and welcome back, and today we're going to be building a completely custom PC case from scratch using a really cool laser engraver. So today I'm going to show you the whole process from going through and using CAD software to model it to actually going through and doing it. Now first off, I want to thank our sponsor today, Otur, for giving us this Laser Master 3. Let's open it up and check it out. I promise this isn't going to be an overburdensome sponsor block or anything like that. I'm just going to open it up and take a look at all the parts here. Now, a couple things I point out that I really like about this one is just the fact that this is, I want to say, really user-friendly. I don't have a terrible large amount of experience with laser engravers. I have had a couple past reviews, but I usually prefer to use my 3D printers when I'm making something. So instead, this was kind of nice because this was very user-friendly. A couple comments though, just right off the bat from at least the things that came in the box. The glasses that you get included in this box are not adequate for the laser. I actually had to break out some glasses from another kit that I got from a different laser engraver, just simply because these glasses just did not cover it. But overall, as you can see, this thing is really robust. There's some really nice buttons on here, really clicky buttons actually. This even comes with a key to start it and an emergency stop button. On the laser, I believe, is 10 watts, which means that compared to some of the other things that we've looked at on the channel, it does take a little bit longer to go through and actually cut things. So if you compare this to like the 15 watt or the 20 watt that we've looked at before, you'll definitely notice a difference in cutting. So I guess the best way to describe this is where other laser engravers may have better lasers, stronger lasers, or even some like pumps to blow out air. This laser engraver is probably more user-friendly, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for something to start off with. So now that we got everything together, let's just go through and assemble this real quick. So let's get started. This assembly process was pretty easy, a little bit complicated at first, but read the instructions. Actually, read the instructions, surprise, surprise, and you'll be pretty well off. Yeah, this actually was not really confusing either. You didn't have to really do any crazy firmware setups or anything like that. And other laser engravers that we've looked at, and yeah, the instructions are pretty straightforward. I did end up having one of the switches flipped. There is that little switch by my hand right now. That is, I had that flipped or whatever, and that switches the motor, so that motor wasn't turned on, and then I flipped that switch and got that working. So just a heads up if you're having issues with that there. Now for the laser, this laser module is pretty small. I also did notice that this actually does a pretty good job blowing out air compared to other laser engravers that we looked at that actually have to have pumps. So this does a pretty good job clearing the area once it, I guess, burns through whatever it's doing. So now let's hop over to the CAD software and kind of start talking about the design of a little case that we're making. So after all, I thought that wood would be a really good material to build out of. I saw some really cute computer cases online. So I'm using Fusion 360 partially because I get this through my university, and it's free, at least for me for now. When it's no longer free, we can have a different discussion. So there's a bunch of other alternatives to this, some open CADs. Honestly, I'm not going to get on about like the fact that freeware is 90% better than paid stuff, but since I have this and I'm at least familiar with this, I use this. So I'm kind of going through like a, I don't know, I'm kind of going for like a box-shaped computer case, really, having some interlocking pieces that kind of go together. So I'm really familiar with cases after we've looked at a bunch on this channel, so I made sure I had cut out holes for like the CPU, the wires for the power supply, and I had some stuff on the side for the main motherboard connectors, etc. Now I chose to make this really interlocking pattern. Now keep in mind my background is not in CAD or in mechanical engineering, so I'm actually doing electrical engineering. So this was a little bit fun, but it's been a useful skill to have, especially when it comes down to things. So these interlocking pieces actually end up working really well. They help a lot. I also started dragging some schematics of some actual measurements. I found this a lot easier than actually having to measure all these parts themselves. And obviously I didn't make those, and credit to whoever created those. But yeah, so basically made those interlocking pieces. I got really lazy on the I/O and just kind of blew that out, and then add some more pieces in there, run through there, and create some more interlocking pieces. So in total, I only made 5 pieces, and the reasoning for this was I wanted to make sure that the top had the option to like basically put a like glass piece over it. Also, I did make it so that the back does not have any, like, I want to say hiding. It doesn't really hide any of the wires. All the wires just run out the back. So not another option probably I should include is some type of feet on here, because if you just lay it down flat, there's going to be a bunch of wires on there from the power supply, etc. So yeah, basically there's nothing else past this. This is just a 5-piece design, and all the wires run on that back right there. So it's actually not that productive. So after a good bit of work, we're finally left with this. It doesn't look half that bad, actually. I thought it looks pretty good. But of course, you'd want more support for the IO shields on like the graphics card, etc. But for the most part, I'd say this looks pretty solid. And I think that the only other thing I'd be worried about is maybe CPU clearance or CPU cooler clearance, because keep in mind this is about the height of the IO, and I keep having to remember that not only are our graphics cards massive these days, which I don't think this would clear any typical 3-slot graphics card anymore, we also have the issue of CPU cooler. So that's pretty much everything together. Now let me just go through, add some venting on the front here. That's kind of important, so we can get our little vents on the front. Yeah, so I'm just going to add some venting holes real quick. These actually did not turn out as well as I thought once we actually get to the lasering part. Now the reason why is these are probably too close together, and it's not going to work as nicely, especially for the fine details that the laser engraver needs. So it just starts getting into the point where it's a little too small. I actually ran into issues where the wood would catch on fire with the laser engraver, and therefore you'd be in a situation where it would just start kind of burning out and kind of burning through those little thin strips of wood, which is kind of to be expected. You got air blowing through there from the engraver. And then I actually made that top hole on the top right there for the power supply, and then I have a big hole in the bottom throughout all the wires. I guess technically on the bottom now, but this is the side you're looking at. That's where the power supply would be. So next up, let's save this, and let's move over to Illustrator. So I saved everything as DXF files. So basically just convert everything to DXF, load it into Illustrator. Alternatively, you could use just Illustrator to flat out make the files, but then I used OpenGRBL, which is a free software. I like using free softwares where I can, and it actually works great. It allows you to rasterize and vectorize pretty much everything that you take in from DXF files, and that's pretty much what you see here, just running through the different. That's what you pretty much see here, running through the different lines and loads. Honestly, this took a long time to troubleshoot. I first tried doing this, which was like basically the lines, which was not as useful as you think it would be. Definitely vectorizing it was a lot faster and a lot more useful. As I said though, the laser does not work well with the orange glasses that they include, and I would highly recommend that you, as I said, I'm not no expert or anything, but I'd highly recommend you actually get a serious pair of laser glasses, because this is clearly definitely not too helpful to look at it with the orange glasses, and it doesn't really help. It makes your eyes, yeah, I think I might be partially blind, guys. But my point is, here you go. Here's kind of where the part we were talking about earlier with the laser kind of cutting a little too much. Pop out the last pieces. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I ended up doing. Was trying a bunch of different ways. This was also partly with just doing lines, but then finally the vectoring was a lot more efficient, and at least cutting things out. I think this first piece took me like 2 hours or 3 hours to make, and then the last 4 pieces took me less than like 30 minutes. So this was not particularly wild by any means. So the final result, actually, I was pretty satisfied with. The pieces and the sides, of course, this material actually ended up like leaching on this like sap or resin after you burned it, so it kind of had these issues. Also, I did notice a couple times where it just did not like cut all the way through, and so there was definitely some jagged edges there. But overall, I'd say the design is pretty solid. I would probably increase the tolerances on these corner pieces here, because as you can see there's a little bit more gaps. Definitely could use, of course, to pop out the front as well. I just noticed that the laser just didn't go through all the way sometimes, and maybe I just need to do another round or another pass. But some of these definitely, turned out better than others. And then, of course, for some reason, the file didn't convert properly for that back where the IO would be. So it just did not properly convert. And I think that next time I would definitely 100%, I wouldn't have done it any differently probably, just because that front panel really shows how thin you can really get it. And as you can see, these are already pretty burnt up. Also, definitely probably a good idea to sand this down, and of course probably stain this and kind of seal this, because as you can see, it's just like really charcoaly and burnt. And that's another thing I noticed too, is that there's just kind of the edges, the charcoal on the edges kind of got everywhere, and that wasn't really super good either. But yeah, no, I'd say the only issues that I really have is just the laser is a little weak at times compared to other laser engravers we've looked at. But other than that, I'd say it's pretty solid. Definitely a great starter one, and thanks for watching.